Hello and welcome. I'm Annie Wright. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and a trauma clinician with a specialty in relational trauma recovery. I'm also the founder of a boutique trauma-informed therapy center. And in addition to this, I'm also an online course creator and a published mental health writer with my pieces and opinions appearing in Forbes, Business Insider, NBC, and the Huffington Post, among others. Every bit of my work in the world, whether this is through my clinical work, through my online courses, or through content like this that I put out into the world, is designed to support those who come from childhood trauma backgrounds to have the best adulthood possible despite adverse early beginnings. I'm so glad to connect with you, and I hope that what I share here can be of support to you. And very importantly, please remember, no matter where you're starting from, change is possible. With that in mind, let's begin this journey together by exploring today's topic: how to recover from growing up with a narcissistic parent. Imagine a father who puts his 11-year-old daughter on the bathroom scale and tells her that no man will ever love her if the line goes above 150 pounds, but then he says he's only telling her this for her own good. Imagine a mother who seems like the perfect, well-regarded soccer mom, sweet and helpful to the other parents and kids out in public, but who rages and screams at her children and husband at home when they displease her. Imagine a father who plays blatant favorites among his children and who only shows any of them love when they do what he wants or when they act like he wants them to. Imagine a mother who deliberately makes her kids feel confused by telling them something didn't happen when it objectively did, invalidating their experience and helping them to learn that they can't trust themselves. Do any of these scenarios feel familiar? Do they make you angry or feel uncomfortable? Do they remind you of anyone you know? Each of these sample vignettes describes a narcissistic parent, or rather, common actions a narcissistic parent may inflict upon their children. And in each of these examples, assuming they're not just one-off experiences, the impact on children can be profound. This is a painful, complex, and deeply important topic to talk about because the relational collateral damage of having been raised by a narcissistic father or mother or guardian can be vast, hugely impactful, and sometimes intergenerational in continuity if left unhealed and unaddressed by the adult child. So in today's video, I want to talk about what a narcissist is, the potential consequences of narcissistic parenting on children, and share suggestions and resources for recovery if you identify with having been raised by a narcissist. First, what defines a narcissist? It's important to clarify that narcissism, excessive interest and preoccupation in oneself, exists on a spectrum of severity, and that all of us as humans are narcissistic to some degree. And while sometimes narcissism is developmentally appropriate, think toddlers who still haven't figured out the world doesn't revolve around them. For others who fall on the more severe end of the narcissism spectrum, or who possess the full criterion of narcissistic personality disorder, this would not be considered developmentally appropriate. So there is narcissism as a trait with variance falling across a wide spectrum, and then there is a narcissist, or for the sake of this video, someone who meets the criterion of narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. It's the DSM. It's the clinical criteria of somebody. The DSM is the bedrock foundational textbook of the mental health field. So the clinical criteria of someone with NPD include a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. 1, has a grandiose sense of self-importance, i.e. exaggerates accomplishments and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate accomplishments. 2, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. 3, believes that he or she is special and unique and can be only understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people or institutions. 4, requires excessive admiration. 5, has a sense of entitlement. In other words, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance. 6 is interpersonally exploitative. In other words, takes advantage of others. 7 lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. 8 is often envious of others or believes that others are envious. 9 shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. Again, all of these criterion came from the American Psychiatric Association and the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. According to the DSM, prevalence rates for NPD range from 0% to 6.2% of the population, and of those diagnosed with NPD, 50 to 70% are male. Again, a statistic from the American Psychiatric Association. Official criteria and statistics aside, I'll add that in my professional experience, there is no one single universal profile of a narcissist. A narcissist can be a leader of the free world or a mediocre small business owner, a washed-up old con man, a homebody recluse, a brilliant and accomplished academic, or a stay-at-home mom. Narcissists can be found indiscriminately across work sectors, races, and socioeconomic strata. Ultimately, though, regardless of this profile variance, narcissists are defined by an almost exclusive self-serving focus on themselves and firmly entrenched psychological defenses that guard against almost intolerable feelings of shame stemming from a deeply wounded psyche. Simply put, deep down, narcissists feel terrible about themselves and do whatever they can to make themselves feel better. This leads the narcissist to cope through a variety of ways, ultimately seeking to make themselves appear and feel more important and special than, at their core, they feel. Unfortunately, in the pursuit of trying to appear more special and important, they often relationally wound those around them, particularly their spouses and their children. What can make being raised by a narcissistic parent so damaging? The psychological effects of childhood neglect and emotional abuse are, fortunately and unfortunately, well documented. We know that children have core developmental needs that include consistent attachment, mirroring, attunement, and positive regard from their primary caregivers in order to help them establish a stable, cohesive, and positive sense of self and help them learn secure relational attachment. We also know that when children don't consistently receive this, or when they instead receive consistent invalidation, frequent insecure attachment experiences, a lack of empathy, or outright hostility from their caregivers, this will impact them in myriad ways. Unfortunately, parents with NPD possess character traits that are almost antithetical to being able to provide their children what they need to emotionally and mentally develop and thrive. For example, narcissists can struggle with being able to focus their attention and orient towards someone else instead of towards themselves. A kind of refocusing parenting begs of us. Children's normal and natural childhood needs can be a bother to a narcissist. The moods of a narcissist may be highly variable and explosive in nature if their fragile emotional regulation skills are challenged, which is inevitable with children. Narcissists can often seek to put their children down to make themselves feel better and/or play favorites among their children, seeking to stabilize themselves through manipulation of the family dynamics. Seeing the child as an extension of themselves, a narcissist may attempt to control the appearance, pursuits, and trajectory of the child so that they align with the image the narcissist is personally trying to display to the world. Narcissists may only show love to a child when they perform or act in ways that are pleasing to the narcissist. Instead of displaying and providing consistent support for their children, a narcissist may invert the dynamic and expect validation, support, and esteem stabilization from their children, therefore parentifying them. A narcissistic parent confronted with a child who is particularly strong-willed, defiant, or independent may rage, abuse, or even disown the confrontational, scapegoated child. And these examples are just the tip of the iceberg. There are myriad ways in which narcissistic parenting can manifest. However, despite how the individual actions of the narcissist show up, and whether the child was raised by a single narcissistic parent or in a blended or married family that colluded with the narcissist, it's safe to assume that any child, whether this child was the favorite of the family or the scapegoat, doesn't escape the ill impacts of being parented by a narcissist. So what can the impacts of being parented by a narcissist look like? Again, while the impacts on the child will vary as widely as the ways in which narcissistic parenting may manifest, some of the impacts may include absorbing and deeply believing in dysfunctional and destructive emotional templates of what love looks like. They can learn their worthiness is dependent on how they act and what they do, not on who they are or that they just are worthy for existing. They may struggle with setting healthy and appropriate boundaries. They may struggle or fail to recognize healthy romantic partners and even be drawn to dating or marrying narcissists themselves. Adult children of narcissists may fall into caretaking and rescuing roles, seeking validation and worthiness from taking care of others and people-pleasing. They may neglect their needs and wants, or even be needless and wantless. They can have a hard time trusting that their feelings and thoughts are valid and that their needs will ever be met. They may deeply struggle with their self-esteem and with maintaining a stable and cohesive sense of self. Adult children of narcissists may attempt to cope with their emotional pain from a childhood of neglect and emotional abuse through addictive and self-destructive substances and behaviors. Also, adult children of narcissists may possibly grow up to become narcissists themselves. And again, this list is in no way exhaustive of all the psychological impacts of being parented by a narcissist. The impacts will vary, and they will depend on the context of the adult or adult child, how strong their sense of self was, whether they had stabilizing, functional relationships with other adults in their childhood, whether they were the scapegoat or their favorite child, how much or how little contact they had with the narcissist, etc. Ultimately, though, the adult children of narcissists will likely face complex psychological healing tasks as a result of their parenting experiences. So, how does one begin healing after being parented by a narcissist? The healing work required by adult children of narcissists will likely include the following tasks. Educate yourself. Whether this is through books, and I'll include a list of the books I recommend in the show notes, or through professional support, you will likely need to begin learning or relearning about what narcissism is, how it can show up in parenting, and what the possible impacts of it can look like. The first step in any healing process is bringing awareness to what is. And I find that psychoeducation about narcissists can be deeply illuminating as you begin to make sense of your past. Another healing task: confront your personal history of trauma and neglect. I strongly recommend working with a trained trauma therapist or other trained professional as you begin to remember, talk about, and make sense of your past. And side note, don't necessarily look to your own family of origin for an accurate reflection of your personal history if you have memory gaps or questions. They may not be willing or able to validate your personal history based on their own trauma with a narcissist. Another healing task: grieve what you did not receive. Inevitably, in the course of educating yourself and confronting your past, you will need to grieve what you did not receive, which essentially was a chance to truly be a kid. This grieving process may take quite some time, and it can at times feel endless, but it's so valid and necessary to your healing process. Another healing task: working through the developmental milestones you may not have achieved. Often, as children of narcissists, we don't fully get the chance to be children or teens with our own identities, needs, wants, and preferences. We may also have missed out on certain developmental milestones like lifestyle experimentation, dating, or even pursuing the education or career we wanted due to the impacts of psychologically unhealthy parenting. It's therefore part of our healing work to begin working through any developmental milestones in conjunction with our personal history, confrontation, and grieving work. Another healing task: setting boundaries, either with the narcissist or narcissists still in your life, or with those you may be over-accommodating and catering to. Learning what healthy boundaries are and how to set them with others is critical for those recovering from narcissistic parenting. Another healing task: seek out healthier, more functional relationships. At first, these may feel hard, if not impossible, to recognize, and you may not trust yourself that you can actually draw these kinds of relationships into your personal life. That's okay. Start with your relationship with your therapist, a trained professional whose job it is to show up in a healthy, functional way. Allow this person to help show you what could be possible in healthier relationships. Over time, this may influence who you attract into your personal life. Another healing task: focus your healing and recovery work on developing a more cohesive and stable sense of self. For most adult children of narcissists, our core healing work revolves around developing a more cohesive and stable sense of self, learning to love and value ourselves for who we are, not for who we think we should be to win approval. Poor sense of self can impact every area of our lives, from our physical and mental health to our relationships, our career advancement. It can even impact our bank account. So, focusing your work with your therapist on cultivating and developing a more cohesive and stable sense of self can be a wonderful way to focus your healing work. Look, this video is not exactly meant to demonize narcissists. At the end of the day, narcissistic parents likely developed this way because of what they were modeled by their own parents. And so it goes through the generations until one person of one generation decides to consciously and intentionally break the cycle. My hope is that if you saw yourself or your personal history in this video, whether as a child of a narcissist or possibly even as a narcissist yourself, that you'll make the choice to break the cycle for yourself and whatever family or legacy you create and leave behind. As we conclude today's video, if you're still not sure if this content applies to you, if you're still not sure if you come from a relational trauma history and had any narcissistic parenting or any adverse impacts as a result, I would invite you to take my signature quiz. Do I come from a relational trauma background? It's a 5-minute, 25-question quiz I created that can be incredibly illuminating and that will point you in the direction of a wide variety of resources that can be of further help to you. Plus, when you take the quiz, you'll be added to my mailing list, where you'll receive twice-a-month letters from me sharing original, high-quality essays with accompanying YouTube videos and audios you can stream, devoted to the topic of relational trauma recovery, and where I share more about me as a person, my life, and how I'm journeying through my own relational trauma recovery journey and general adulthood. My newsletters are the only place where I share intimate glimpses into my life, including photos, the resources that are supporting me, the things I've discovered that delight me, words that are uplifting me, the practices that nourish me, etc. So please be sure to sign up for my mailing list, whether or not you want to take the quiz. I'll link to both of these things in the show notes. Finally, thank you so much for listening to me today. I truly hope that even a small part of what I shared today felt helpful to you. If you found value in this video and would like to stay connected with my latest content, please consider giving the video a like. It helps more than you know. I appreciate your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you. So thank you, and until next time, please take such good care of yourself. You're so worth it.